as you're getting there, I want to make you aware of a few things that are happening. Some of you, I hope that all of you have seen, but there is a chance that some of you will not see until tomorrow because of I'm trying to learn the software still. A text message. It'll be from me or from the church, and but it'd be a little bit different looking number, and it's a special phone number that we've set up through the software. So it's only an online number. You can text it, and it sends messages. If you try to dial it, no one's going to answer the phone when it rings. But there's a certain way that we have to send those messages out. So I can't send out 40 text messages at the same time, because then it gets flagged and it looks like spam. So we have to send them out in drops of like 5 or 10, and there's an automated system that does that for us now. But you should be seeing messages that say that, and some of you have already responded, but of the 42 messages that I sent out, 13 people responded to say that you got the message. So I have no idea if the other people got the message, if it went to their spam, or if it just didn't go. I have no idea what's happening with the rest of those. So for those of you that did get the first one, so I'd also tried to get them to all go out last Monday. And I set it up to go out only on Monday. So I'm not going to monkey with it until Tuesday. If I don't see a bunch more responses until Tuesday of next week, then those of you that have responded might get a test number 2. This is all in preparation for a few things. One, this system that we have, hit management system. If you've been in, some of you may have familiar with contact management, CME, contact management system anyway. There's a corporate jargon 3-letter acronym for it. But this is part of what it does. So when someone comes in as a visitor, and if you get a visitor card, then we will be able to put them into the contact management system and say, hey, and then we'll send them a thank you. Like, hey, thanks for coming to church today. Is there you have any prayer requests or whatever? And so it will send out and kind of put them on a schedule where they get contact from that, and they'll have opportunity to respond to us and be able to kind of stay up to date with us. The other is whenever we have ads out there. I'm sorry, I'm just really distracted at the moment. When we run an ad campaign, which we're not going to call them ads, we call them digital tracks, but they work a lot like a other kind of Facebook ad or Instagram ad that you might see. People click on that, and they'll be able to schedule a visit with the church, or if they happen to our website, they'll be able to schedule a visit. If they go to Google, if they are searching, you guys, we get a crazy number of Google hits, people searching for churches, and our name appears towards or at the top of those searches. And so we get a lot of looks through that. So if someone, and they can chat with me through that. There's a chat enabled on Google, so they can do that. So whenever those contacts happen, they'll also be able to schedule a visit. And when they do that, then there's an automated thing. They'll go out and start a communication chain with them. And it helps that way, as you guys know me, I get running and I fully intend to do stuff. Like today, we're out picking up kids on the bus. I'm like, oh, we were supposed to call them. Oh, we were supposed to contact them. And I have every intention to do that, but I just don't, because there's every other thing. So this will help me to stay on track too. It's kind of it's a contact management, but it's also a manager management system to make sure that those contacts happen. And we'll be able to, once we get this system kind of set up, we'll be able to have other of you be part of all of this system. So they'll schedule a visit, and we are not just handing these out to like random person walks in the door. But when they schedule a visit, then we are starting this, and there's a little bit more dressing up. This has to do, like we have to get some things, but here are some basic things that are going to, like, it, because it'll say get a free gift. Well, here's the free gift. It'll have one of these two little mini booklets in there. One is about the church, and it's just some biblical concepts about why are we doing church, and how does that work. And so there's that, and then there's this one. There's 2 to 1. There's most of them are these about prayer, and it's just about how to pray. And they're kind of little. They're both a little study guide and a little work booklet that maybe a family could go through together. And so it's and they're real simple. It's not giving them 300 pages to have to read. Here's a little bit that you can get something out of. And if you only made 1 page, well, then you had a pretty good little study. Okay, so it's kind of really aimed that way. In here is also our brand new track, which you'll see on the back table. We only have 1,000 of these, so don't use sparingly. They are full color, glossy, nice. They are been printed with our church information on the back, including the website, and I love it. It's very similar to our very first tracks that we had here, which said how to get to heaven from Walport. Some of you will remember those. These are just how to get to heaven from Oregon. And of course, you know how to get to heaven from Oregon. It's the same that you get to heaven from anywhere. And it's just real simple. Realize you're a sinner. There's a penalty for your sin. Jesus paid the penalty. Receive Jesus as your Savior. Boom. So it's just real simple. Those tracks are in there. We also have our mainline standard. These tracks. So we get one of those that are in there. There's a Jesus is my rock stress ball for the adults. There is, if they have children, so we'll have a kind of a packet set up that's they got kids or they don't have kids. There's a little fidget thing. It's a little cross fidget thing with a Lighthouse Baptist Church keychain on it. There's if there's not kids, there's just a more standard Lighthouse Baptist Church keychain, little fob. It's not as colorful. And then there's also a tin of mints with our logo on there. So those are kind of cool. And then a greeting card. We're glad that you're here. And we'll personally fill these out, probably Jamie's calligraphy or something on the inside. Thank you for coming. One of the cool things will be, if they've planned to visit, we'll be able to preset these because we'll know if they're planning on coming. Part of the idea is I'm planning on coming September, date, and we'll have this card ready. Hey, Bob and Sue, glad you guys came. Welcome. And so that'd be kind of cool when they come in. Then we're able to identify them. Hey, Bob and Sue came. We already have a greeting card. We're ready for you. We're expecting you. You're welcome here. And so kind of, if you can see that, try to make, you can see where that will go a little bit further than getting your generic gift at the door. So a lot more targeted. To be able to do that effectively, if you get the text message from the strange-looking number that says, "This is Pastor Bo, I'm telling you it's the truth, it's not spam," please respond to that. I got to know that's working, otherwise this stuff doesn't work. Another thing that'll happen is we have, and you can check them out, they're on the back table now. There are, we do have a new set of visitor cards that we got from the same company called Mercy and Truth, where we ordered these. By the way, we got 1,000 of these, full color, glossy, nice tracks, imprinted, $30 for 1,000. So truly a ministry. So that was, so from the same company, we got the visitor cards. But one iteration that we may move to that is we would say, if you're a visitor here today, text visitor to that number. And that'll set up another automation. And then we can set up contact. And then everything that goes in, they only have to fill out the visitor card. Or another thing that we can do, and we can do this for our whole church, is we'll have that number text prayer to, and then you fill in. And so when you text prayer to it, then it'll send you back to a little fill in, like a form, and then you can fill in a prayer request in there that gets something onto the prayer chain. And so then that prayer chain, that'll feed to wherever that we want it to feed to for internal church prayer requests. So there's a few different things like that. We'll be able to use that, and pretty cool stuff. It's way different than we used to do things. But as Jamie and I were picking up kids this morning, we were just talking that, we used to fill up, Jamie and I had a 66 passenger bus. That was our ministry when we were first dating to just after we were married. We were bus captains, and so our job was, we weren't even old enough to drive the bus, but we would go out, and our job was to fill the bus, and we did. We filled that 66 passenger bus with kids, sometimes more than 66, and kids crawling all over the thing, and it was different back then. It was a different way to reach the kids. It was a different way to communicate with the kids. And now we're finding, okay, if we want to communicate with these kids these days, and we want to try to get them to actually come to church and to be able to know where they are on Sunday morning, we're going to have to work harder than we used to have to work, or at least work different than we used to have to work. So we go to one house this morning to pick up the kids. All 3 kids are not at home. They're at someone else's house, and Mom doesn't know where they are. So I'm sure they're somewhere safe, pre-vetted, but that doesn't mean that they're, they just go, hey, I'm going to Billy's, and there they go. And so just trying to keep track of all of that is really, really tough. And we're not going to get every kid every Sunday, but I'd like to be able to get every kid most Sundays, and we're not going to get every family every Sunday. That's fine. But I'd like to have, you guys know me, I want everybody. Y'all come. Okay, so that's how we do. So that's that. Any questions about any of that stuff? You like it so far? Concerns? It's definitely another level. We used to walk this street, and I've knocked on every door in this town, as far as I know, and but nowadays it's just different. You go knocking on somebody's door. It's not that it was comfortable before COVID, but since COVID, there is just a total other feeling if you are randomly at someone's house, and it's different. You might have just been a nuisance before. Now you are a threat, and I know me. And I know how it is when someone knocks on my door. I do feel threatened. I do feel a bit of alarm. I'm not like, hey, welcome neighbor. What are you looking for? I just don't. It's like, why are you here? What kind of agenda do you have? Leave as quickly as possible. So there's that's me, and that's probably a lot of the population today. So, all right. So how do we make those contacts? Well, I think we will probably move to something that's more old school, or more Bible based, more public place communication. It's like out in the street, out in the parking area, in a gathering space, just having conversations. And we're seeing where some folks are really having good success with that, and we've done that in the past with some success. So we'll probably move to more of a model like that, but also this way, being on people's phones, kind of like that commercial on some TV, like how do you slide into someone's DMs? That sounds really fun. Yeah, direct message. But we're not ready for that yet. Okay, so according to the commercial. All right, so lots of goodies, lots of good stuff, and getting ready for next year's theme, and excited about that. We'll close out this year, I believe, really strongly as well. Kids have a big thing coming up for our youth leaders. Yeah, this youth group. You can see, I know that we don't have, we're not breaking out the walls here with the teen group that's here this morning, but compare that to the teen group that was here 4 months ago, 5 months ago. That teen group that's there is exponentially larger. I know it's easy to skew the numbers with small reels, but that's exponential growth compared to where we were just a few months ago, where we were at the beginning of this year. That's good, and it's been solid. And there's other kids around that are on the peripheries, right almost there, that are showing up on Wednesday nights, that were here last night for back-to-school bash, that were here for video night. There's a lot of other kids that you guys aren't necessarily, if you're just here on Sunday morning, you're not seeing those kids. They're here, and they're all around, and there's a lot of work that's gone into it. Workers are being very faithful. They're doing an excellent job, and so that is growing. We're going to take the leaders from that group to the Northwest Youth Conference in Portland, at Greater Portland Baptist Church, and it's some expense, I'll tell you that. But they get some of the best preachers in our world today are going to be in their face, and they're going to get loaded up. Like Joe says, you're going to get punched. Every message, every session, you get punched. And we're going to take the leaders to that and then just come back and expect them to make an absolute wreck out of everything that's going on around here. And that's what we're really looking forward to. I think there's something really to collate around, and I'm really excited. We watched a video the other night of the kids who are now our youth leaders, Bree and Caleb and Charity, Alan, well, not really Alan, he don't want to mess with kids, but we watched a video of those guys when they were just little ones, a lot younger ones at camp a few years ago, and it's really crazy cool to see them now not being the campers, not being the youth, but being the leaders. That's what you want to see. We did not think that was going to happen. If you'd asked Joe and I, would this happen? We didn't think it would happen because we all truly expected our kids to graduate high school, go to college, and leave, and not even be here. Sadly, they're still here. But they didn't leave. They are staying around, and they've been able to get jobs, and Caleb drives 1,000,000 miles to be able to do what he does. But it's really awesome to see that happen. In fact, when we were looking at that, there's only one kid that stands out of that group. And I'm like, that one just really fell out. I mean, there's one kid in there that I can remember. And really, I still have hope for that now young man, and maybe he'll get to the bottom and he'll start looking up again. I'll pray for Alex. All right, 1 Samuel chapter 19, and let's look at verse number 9. And we are today going to be opening discussion on responding to ruptured relationships. Appreciate you abiding my commercials. And let's get some air. Get these fans on, please. I'm dying. All right. Responding to ruptured relationships. 1 Samuel chapter 19. I said 9, but let's go to 8 because it's the paragraph. I know you guys love me for that. And there was war again, and David went out and fought with the Philistines and slew them with great slaughter, and they fled from him. And the evil spirit from the Lord was upon Saul as he sat in his house with his javelin in his hand, and David played with his hand. And Saul sought to smite David even to the wall with the javelin, but he slipped away out of Saul's presence, and he smote the javelin into the wall, and David fled and escaped that night. As we considered ruptured relationships, in June of 2009, a magazine called Live Science ran a study of 1,000 people, and said half of all friendships are replaced every 7 years. So half of every friendship that you have, so think about your friendships. How many of them are more than 7 years old that are active friendships with you now, that you still have coffee with them, you still go fishing with them, or whatever is the case? Not many of them are more than 7 years old. Now, keep this in mind. Jesse Hood's my best friend from high school. I mean, I still consider him a very good friend. We do text, we do call occasionally. We live 1,500 miles away from each other. I mean, he lives in Dallas. He's got his family. He's on full tilt boogie. He's got everything going on in his life. I'm way up here. I got my grandkids, and we're on full tilt boogie. I mean, I thought we were busy when we just had 3 kids. I thought I was busy when I just had my car, my wife's car, and my 2 oldest kids' car. Now I've got my car, my wife's car, my 2 oldest kids' car each for their spouse, and my youngest kid's car that she continues to wreck, and then everybody else's car, and you're trying to do maintenance on all of those. It's just like I never have enough oil at the house. So there's, so it's just constantly thinking. Alan's like, can I get on the schedule next week for my car work? You know, it's just another thing. So it's just so busy. Life is so busy. And then I think about, well, when's the last time that my friend and I hung out? A long time. And he flew out here to do it. He flew out here, rented a car, and drove to me. I mean, that's been a long, and that's been like 4 years ago now, maybe 5. And so that's really rare. Guys, that the rest of the relationships that I had from when Jesse and I were in school, we were inseparable. Dak Rainey and Ryan Hood, he's passed away now, but just that Andy Tabing and our group of friends, and we were such good buddies. And I know that if one of those guys were to call me today, if Jason Shelton were to call me today, I'd be like, yeah, what's up, man? How are you doing? What's your wife's name? You know, it would just be, I mean, it's been a while. And now, not that we don't still like each other, but are we still friends? When was the last time that they borrowed a tool from me or stole a tool from me, kept it after 2 week, 2 week rule? It's mine now, right? I mean, that used to be the all the time thing, you know. Where are my you always had those when we were kids, because we were always melting down our radios in our cars. And you had those electrical wire strippers. You know what I'm talking about, Jim. And you're like, where's my stuff at? Well, that's because Dak took it, because he's working on his truck now. And he's like, well, I've had it for 2 weeks. They're mine now. Buy another one. And so there's, you know, but when's the last time that they stole my tools? Or when's the last time that you know, we went camping or whatever? We see that stuff all the time. So who are my friends now? Well, it's a totally different set of guys that I call. You know, there's a totally different group of people that I would call now. It's not that we replace them and we don't like them, but our lives change. What we're involved with change. Think about this church. It was hard for us to do, but to think about this church 7 years ago, what did it look like compared to today? I mean, that was a long time ago. A lot of water under the bridge. Totally different set of people. Most of you were not here. We were in this building, but it was still pretty freshy fresh. The carpet still smelled. I mean, it was you know, back then it was something, you know, something different. And today it's something that doesn't make it bad, doesn't make it wrong. It just means our lives have evolved. So our friends change, but also relationships don't just change because of, well, we had kids, they don't have kids, and so it's kind of hard to get along with each other because they can't understand the speed of things. Remember when my kids, I was really good friends with one of the preachers here in the state, but my kids made it to, I got kids in high school, and he had toddlers in elementary at home. And he couldn't understand why I was always busy, why it was hard for me to make time to get to his different things, or if he wanted to come over, why I couldn't stop and be just with him. It was really tough for him. And it's like, man, we just got stuff. And then when his kids hit high school, I literally laughed. I laughed. Ha ha! Welcome to the world, dude. Now you start to understand. Because things do change. So it's not only just because of that life cycle change, but you know, sometimes there's hurts that happen. Our friends disappoint us, or we disappoint our friends, or however the situation goes. There are those things, and so that's what we really want to talk about is when a breakup becomes painful. Most breakups are painful. They're difficult to deal with, and many of them are entirely unprovoked. Entirely unprovoked. This is what we see here in this case with Saul and David. What had David done to Saul? Do you know what triggered Saul? David goes to war with Saul, fighting for his God and king. Kicks butt. I mean, he goes out there and has a day. Okay, and so with that then, and Saul doesn't do bad either. The army wins, and it's frankly, if you consider, it's at Saul's direction. Saul is the king. He's leading out the charge. David is in front of the charge, and he's winning. And they win the war. They come back, and the women are singing, Saul has killed his thousands. And Saul's like, yeah, that's right, I killed my thousands. And David his tens of thousands. And Saul says, Now, David had killed the tens of thousands. It was David's sword swinging. But who was directing the battle? Saul was. So instead of being confident about that he had won the battle, Saul begins to get jealous of David. And don't forget a couple other things along this path. David had to this point been one of Saul's very, very best friends. Not only had David gone out and fought for him, but whenever Saul was having difficulty with his spirit, David had played the harp, calmed him down. David had been there for Saul, had been nothing but loyal to Saul. Nothing but loyal to Saul. And Saul is hucking a javelin at him. Not like to tickle him, but to kill him. He's trying to kill him. And David barely escapes that. And so I've had bad breakups before. I don't know that I've ever had a breakup where someone was just trying to kill me. Like we were friends yesterday and today they're actually trying to kill me, although it happens. Think about how oftentimes when the most dangerous environment for a police officer to enter into, you know what it is? It's domestic violence. Domestic violence. These people used to love each other. And now they're trying to kill each other. And if you go in and try to stop it, they'll kill you on the way. Things break. And when they break hard. And it's interesting, though, to see how often, though, it's unprovoked. David had done nothing like this. So that kind of helps set some of the stage here. So we see the jealousy. If you wanted to see that, we could see that in 1 Samuel 18. We can understand some things about Saul's psyche here. Saul was a very insecure man. Remember that whenever he was first ordained to be king, he hid from that. He's out hiding in the stuff. The first opportunity he has for battle, he's literally back hiding in the supply line. He's a coward. He's insecure sort of a guy. He does get some really significant military victories. He does do some things, but he's always he's never confident in himself. Fascinating thing to consider. What if Saul, whenever Goliath was out on the other side of the valley, what if Saul would have went out there and said, all right, Goliath, let's go. Remember, Saul is the biggest boy on the whole Israel side. What if Saul, and he's God's ordained, what if Saul would have said, come on, Goliath? Who would have fell that day? No. I do not believe so at all. I believe that pretty much whatever man had walked out there and stood off against Goliath, God would have blessed that day. But where was Saul? Hiding in the tent. Don't have his armor on. We know that because he lets David try it on. So he's always willing to hide behind someone else. I see what you're saying, but you would have said Saul because that battle, David did take that, and we can see the foreordination of God in that whole process, but also understand the will of God in the process. The will of God in the process was for God's people to get the victory. And God was looking for a man. And so but Saul was hardly ever that man. He was really insecure. So when he come back and he hears that story, he hears that song, it just wrecks his insecurity. And now then he starts lashing out. So then David, we could rightly consider that David might have said, why? Why? Saul, why are you hucking a javelin at me? Why have you turned your heart against me? Why am I now become your enemy? Remember the Apostle Paul in the book of Galatians, he says, am I now become your enemy because I have told you the truth? So sometimes that does happen. So this can happen in, like we see this oftentimes. I can't remember who I was just talking about this with this week. And I think it was in this building, but there was a conflict over a family inheritance. Someone dies, and then there gets to be a conflict over who's going to get the inheritance, and the family fights about it. And someone will feel slighted. Someone will feel like that they've been disrespected by their family. It happens in business, okay, where someone will say, well, I was doing my part, I was doing what I was supposed to do, and then this, I wasn't treated fairly. In this case, so it's a slight. And so when that slight occurs, then very oftentimes there's going to be a broken relationship, especially among friends or family. So a breaking point. Breaking point. The problems do not happen overnight. Remember with Saul, even with Saul and David here, it wasn't just that song that tipped it over. There was a pattern of behavior that already had occurred with Saul. Remember also, Saul's already heard the judgment of God through Samuel, because Saul has already now disobeyed God and not taken care of the Agagites like he was supposed to. So Saul has proven himself to be unworthy of his crown, but he still does have the crown. This fracture didn't occur overnight. There was something down underneath. There was a pea in the shoe, a pea in the under the mattress that had that was creaking, that was cracking, and eventually that fissure was going to become evident. It doesn't happen. You don't have these fractures. Usually don't happen overnight. They don't happen with friends or with married couples or with church memberships. And some of the nastiest, worst things I've ever seen in my life, I've seen in churches. I think it's 3 separate times. I recall as a child having to pack our stuff up on a Sunday afternoon and try to leave our house with nowhere to go, and leave in the middle of the night, just within 24 hours, pack up and leave everything that we have, because of a church fight where the church went a different direction from my dad, and so then we would have to leave. Just nasty stuff. I can remember in one situation where the members of the church literally lined up on the driveway and laughed at us as we were leaving with our stuff, and shouted all kinds of nasty things at us. Just nasty things. None of that was God's fault. I thank God for my parents during that time. They said, this isn't God's fault. And most of those people, very many of those people have since apologized, and there's been a lot of them. God killed some of them. I believe that with all of my heart. And there's other things that have occurred along those lines. But I know that might seem like a really harsh statement, but I promise you it's not. I'll tell you, there's been people that have had come to an early demise over things they've done, even against this ministry, in the 20 years that we've been here. So be careful messing with God's things. But even in those events, the fissure didn't open up overnight or suddenly on a Sunday morning. It was things that were boiling over time. There were problems that were there before, and then they show up suddenly. They blow up suddenly. Most relational breakups happen explosively. You notice that? There will be a I used to keep this like a box of Kleenex up here, and then someone stole it, and they stole that one too. Thieves. There's a, thank you. They just happen, not, we'll find the ones that that are our good friends or casual friends. Like I say, this time begins to erode and separate. But they're still the folks when they call, you're like, hey, how's it going? Okay, that's one thing. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the sort of breakups where the person's name is mentioned and then you get that feeling. You get that, okay, that's the ones I'm talking about. Because you used to get, now you get the feeling that, and you used to get the feeling of those kind of relationships. You see the difference? The ones where you used to love going fishing with them, and now you're like, that guy's going, I don't think I'm going to go. There's not even a halibut in the world that I want to be on the boat to get that guy. So, I want to. I just throw up the whole way. But I've got the patches now, so I haven't tried. I've only been rock fishing with the patch. I did okay. I threw up twice, but it was mild. I didn't feel too bad. Even with the patch, I still chum. Huh? I followed the instructions. I don't remember how many hours before or sometime. It says on the bottle. I did whatever it said. Or box, whatever the thing. But I didn't feel bad doing it. That was what was weird. I was like, I just threw up. All right, let's go. I need to go again. I'm really needing to go fishing. I told my wife that this morning, looking at the river. So it's not overnight. You have things like Paul and Barnabas. Good people have breakups. Paul and Barnabas had not a casual breakup. It was explosive. And it was felt, tremors were felt throughout the church world at that time. So it was an explosive breakup. Did God use that breakup? He used both sides. Because Paul and Barnabas were powerful enough, good enough, on their own to each lead missionary teams. They didn't need to be together. They needed to be split up. So I do believe that was God's intention. But God used that, but it shouldn't have been explosive like that. They should have been able to come to an amicable, hey, you know what? Barnabas, you know those folks over at Crete. You've got a really good relationship there. You can get some stuff done there. I don't get along so well over there. Why don't you go that way? I'll go this way. It should have been something more along those lines, but it wasn't. It was, I can't stand that guy, and we're, sorry, he wants to bring that sorry Scudder along with him. I can't stand that kid. Mark's already bailed on us before. He's going to bail us again. So it went that way. But there was, so you have all of this, these split-ups that happen. You have Saul and David. Saul and David, when you look at your Bible historically, they were a really good military, a really powerful team. Sometimes that's just way overshadowed by how great David was and how sorry Saul turned out to be later. But while they were together at the beginning, they were powerful, and it just didn't work. One thing to remember with breakups, especially even when breakups that are maybe painful to us, that it's okay to break a relationship for the honor of God. Sometimes we do have relationships that need to be broken up. I observed a relationship at the high school Friday night that needs to be broken up. I intend to talk to the parents about it. But it will be safer for everyone involved if that relationship is ended, because it's creating violence, and you shouldn't ever see that. It's just not okay to do that. If we honor God, sometimes you might find a relationship, even a relationship with a friend. It could even be, I'll talk about this more later, it might even be considered to be a healthy relationship. But if it's not honoring God, then that relationship needs to be. So there's those things that can happen. It's okay to do that. Keep in mind, I'm talking mostly about friends here. But also, though, keep in mind that the Apostle Paul even had a carve out, even in marriage, for this. Now, it wasn't up to the believing spouse to leave, but if the unbelieving spouse did not want to stay with the believing spouse, the unbelieving spouse, according to the Apostle Paul, is okay to leave. Interesting. Very interesting. And so there's that's a pretty, I think that's extreme. I think that's on the dramatic end of the whole spectrum. But those things are there. There's also breakups can happen because of different maturity levels. Recall one relationship I was in and was speaking to someone about it, and they said, well, consider that you and the other person are each climbing a ladder. You're on a different rung than she is. Well, okay, that often occurs. It happens a lot of times with young relationships. Consider that boys don't even have a good brain until they're 26 years old. Most girls get there at 19. So think about every people, my hands raised, that were married at below 25 years old. The guy is still a moron. I mean, that's the absolute truth. You do not have a developed brain, men, until you're about 26 years old. That's why we can still send you into war, and you say, yes, sir. Right? I mean, it's the truth. You're like, here, just put on this green suit, put this gun on, and a helmet, and run towards those other guys with machine guns. Okay, yes, sir. It'll be okay. We're proud of you. Okay. And there they go. Don't have a developed brain. The older guys are setting back. They have multiple stripes on their shoulders. They're setting back saying, all right, now you go there, you go there. Why? Their brain is developed. They know better than to go out there and all of that stuff. And so, so there's but girls, you notice this with girls. It's just, take a 19-year-old mother, a 20-year-old mother, and compare her to her 20-year-old husband. Oceans of difference. I'm sorry. It's not even close. The level of understanding of responsibility. Now, he might be going to work.
Sounds like you're local on that. I'm still like 12.
Well,
I mean, she said I was 11 when we met. And I may have got to like 15, I'm still 12. Like half.
yeah.
It's half your skeleton.
Yeah, half years. Yeah, half years. The guy might be going to work. He might be fulfilling his civic obligations, and as best as he knows, he's doing the best as he can. But go ahead and have him to go to work, come home, cook dinner, plan dinner for tomorrow, plan lunch for tomorrow, lay out clothes, get the clothes ready, think about cleaning the house, think about doing all this other. And meanwhile, the guy is like, hey, but my friends the clan clash is starting in 15 minutes. I've got to be there ready with my VR on so that I can play the game. He's planning, but he's planning on a whole other, like, not even thinking about the family, not even think. I'm just telling the truth. So it'll kick in at some point, and at some point, when the weight hits, then that's when our hair falls out, and that's when we turn gray, that's when we put on belly fat, that's when all that happens. It's because we finally like, oh, that's what it was about. Man, I wish I could go back. Anyway, so there's, and then you start, that's when people buy Harleys. So there's, there's this, so relationships will break up because of different levels of maturity. It happens in friendships, it happens in marriages, it happens in boyfriend, girlfriend. That's why most high school relationships will not last. Why? Because in every case, she's ahead of him. So she's thinking on a different level than he is. He's thinking about one thing. She's thinking about the world. I mean, she's already like strategizing like how the house is going to look, and he's got one thing on his mind. So in every case, she's ahead of him. Sorry, I'm also preaching the truth. This is facts. So there's, those don't usually last. You have cases of my in-laws who were literally a check yes or no, third grade boyfriend, girlfriend. And they are still 60 plus years later married, married for over 60 years. You count the time whenever they were kiddos, in grade school, it's just ridiculous. So they are a real love story, like rarity. But for most cases, it's just the way that it is. Also, why it's just not uncommon to find this is not in these notes, but why isn't it uncommon that you have an older man married to a younger woman? She's ahead of him, and so the women are usually ahead of the curve on maturity scale. So the younger woman makes more sense. That's not the case all the time. I know there's other cradle robbers of you, but there's cougars. There's one day, yeah. One day in 4 years. Sorry. Preaching you, Kyle. All right, so the different maturity levels that happens. It happens in churches too. It's just not uncommon in churches to have a situation where you have people that are like, man, we sat in pews. Sorry, and I'd love to have pews, but think about how often we take up chairs, put down chairs, and so forth in here, and we kind of have this vision of this is maybe temporary-ish kind of thing, and things are going to change. But there are some people that it's not church unless there's pews and organ, people wearing robes, okay, and they just have this this thing of, well, what is that? It's possibly a maturity level issue. They can get church and they can get fed with round mouth, whoa, whoa, and speech from the text. But most of us are not mature enough to get something from that. We'd be okay, and so there's aren't you guys glad that I don't do that? But I would like to go to the kind of church where you hear some of those guys that can preach with kind of a little bit of a sing song in their voice, and they just kind of get the going and the hack and all that. I'd like to have some of that sometime, but all right. So that was a good point one, I guess. And I'll just say that there's a breaking point, and then we get stuck in the middle with these things. With the relational issues, there's usually an underlying problem that's going to lead to a break point, but at that point when there's an evident issue, an evident problem, and oftentimes there's this limbo area that's kind of just frustration. There's a frustration about, well, what do I do? Where do I go from here? And those things, and I'm not talking about. I just want to make this very, very clear. I'm not talking in these cases. We're not talking about a situation where there's a safety concern, like that someone's going to get hurt, harmed. I know that we open up with Saul throwing a javelin at David. That's an obvious violent situation. God never expected anybody to be a punching bag, and there's no sense staying in a violent, unsafe scenario. Do not do that. We're not trying to make reconciliation with violence, criminal behavior. That's not anything that we're trying to do. We're talking about generally just things where there's a breakup that occurs over differences, just general differences with folks. And I use a term like explosive, and I know that can even sound like I'm maybe in some way condoning that. I'm not in any way condoning that. Paul and Barnabas' breakup was explosive. No one threw a punch. There doesn't have to be punches thrown in order for that to happen. However, one of the best ways for guys in a fractured relationship to get it better is to just to go ahead and fight, and then you'll be better afterward. It's just, all right. But that's when we were a lot younger. All right. That's this semi-pro football that's being played. Cracks me up. With these old guys out there living their glory days, and then coming up with the hamstring or whatever. I don't even have to go to football to do that. I tried softball, and that happened with me. Cracks me up. Glory days. All right. So with that, any questions or concerns? Just let you know, there's this went to some areas that really surprised me, but so I'm going to give you this little taste from it as we close today. Nobody can keep you from the will of God except you. So consider that with ruptured relationships. No matter the ruptured relationship, no matter the cause of the rupture of the relationship, no matter the fault of the ruptured relationship, no matter the extent or the harm, the hurt that has come because of the relationship, no matter how that looked, still, no one can keep you from the will of God for your life except you. There is nothing that someone else can do to you that would keep you from God's will for you. You are the only one that can determine the will of God. Now that should bring hope. It should bring empowerment and a confidence that you can fulfill God's will in your life. Anyone can. It can bring hope to any kind of a victim, any kind of a heartache, any kind of a hurt, because God's will for you is still possible because He is a personal God. You have a personal relationship with Him. That is pretty powerful, I believe. And so I wrote that down word for word. That's not my words. That's Dr. Ouellette's words, and I think they're pretty great. All right. We'll dismiss from that. You got about 5 minutes. We'll be back.